What's up, everyone? It's your boy Norman Radd89 here, bringing you another video. And for today's video, we're going to be talking about Friday the 13th Part 2, the sequel to the popular film Friday the 13th, Sackhead Jason, our first introduction to an adult version of Jason Voorhees. And of course, we're going to be talking spoilers. So if you haven't seen this film, you need to go run out and watch it, then come back so we can talk about it. And that's your last spoiler warning. So let's get into this video. So Friday the 13th Part 2 is a very monumental film because this is our first introduction of adult version Voorhees, like Jason Voorhees, our first introduction of him as an adult. Sackhead version Jason, or some people call him like farmer version Jason because he's got the overalls and like the plaid and all that kind of stuff. And we have some really good, amazing characters in this film. And I think that's one big improvement if we're going to get right into it. Positives, negatives, and then the rating. Right off the bat, my main positive is there are some better characters in this film, like Jenny and all the other characters. I actually think this cast is probably the cutest cast of chicks that you want to go with, because a lot of people, like, you know, that's a main part of Friday the 13th films. It's like, we got to have some sexy babes over there in this camp counselors and stuff. So this film, I think, actually has the best all-around cast of cute girls, and we have just a good cast in general and a big cast, like a bigger budget, you can tell, compared to that first one, because there's a lot of stuff going on in this one, and that's what's probably key, too, is the production value is more, and you can see that in the film. They use it to their advantage. And this one's produced and directed by Steve Miner, and I think he has a good way about doing his films, Steve Miner. He's not the most noticeable kind of director, but he's a great director that you can trust to deliver a consistent type slasher film. You know what I mean? Like I said, he doesn't strive out of his way to put a stamp on his material, but I think it just is a very consistent type of material. And like I said, he's one of those directors, if you're a producer and you're like, or a writer, and you're picking the director, he's one that you can trust to do a faithful adaptation of your work. And I think this one, for real, is, like I said, Friday the 13th Part 2. If you were to look on paper, just on paper, this is probably easily a better film than Friday the 13th, for sure, because, like I said, it has a better cast. The fact that we have a really good intro, how it kind of shows the ending of that first movie. Alice is having like that nightmare, and then Jason stalks her at her house and meets her there and kills her. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, like just the way that the movie starts, and then we go all the way back to Crystal Lake, meet our new cast, you know, of members of camp counselors that are going to be dispatched. And I think this one has a really good pace to it. I still really love that first one, and that might be nostalgia and the fact that, like I said, that was the very first film I saw, and my grandpa showed me this one. But Friday the 13th Part 2 is still a very strong sequel, and on paper, and if I was to look outside myself without taking my feelings into consideration, this is probably better than the first film, easily, just because of, you know, we have the introduction of Jason. The design of him is really cool. I like it, even though some people say the Sackhead thing was kind of from the town that dreaded sundown, but I don't mind that. Slashers are always taking homages or copying other slashers in the genre, in that subgenre. It just happens. There's just so many. But Friday the 13th Part 2, I think, has a really good pace, and the third act is bombastic, wild, when Jenny gets to that, like, kind of altar that he has of Mrs. Voorhees' head, and, like, she right away thinks of, like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, put on the suit and, like, you know, the sweater and pretend to be his mom and try to take Jason, you know, out. And it's like, Jenny's a smart final girl, and I think that was really cool too, is they're like, how are we going to up the ante from the previous film? We're going to have Jason in it. He's going to be against that final girl, and the final girl is going to kind of get the one-up on him and be really smart and witty in the moment of distress. But as you can see, I still have my Sackhead Jason right here. We got this beauty, Friday the 13th Part 2. I really do adore this film. Like I said, I love this franchise in general. Every one of these films I could have some enjoyment in and some factor and all that kind of stuff where I love it. This is just one of those ones where there's so many other Jason films where I either really, really love them and adore them, and I think they're clearly better than this film. And then there's a couple that I feel just nostalgia for, and I feel like that's why, you know, this one kind of falls a little bit lower in the ranking. Like I said, this is probably clearly better than the first film, but nostalgia reasons and personal reasons of connections with some other films, this one does kind of fall lower down the list. But I still do really love Friday the 13th Part 2. That first introduction of Jason is pretty scary, like that, just the creation of the character. But I don't think this is the scariest version of Jason or anything like that. But I like the fact that we meet him in this film. He uses different weapons and all that kind of stuff. In terms of negatives, I would say with this film is it's very copycat status of the first film. It's almost like doing the first film again, but just better with more production value, even though we have Jason and the mother. That's what's kind of different with the first film, the whodunit. It's a little bit of whodunit, but once you see this film and you've seen the first one, you kind of realize like, oh, it's got to be Jason Voorhees and he's come back for revenge and stuff. But also, there's not a lot of backstory on what Jason did in that time and growing up and to become an adult, what happened in between that time. We assume like he trained, he stayed in the woods, he took care of himself, he grew bigger, but who knows, maybe Mrs. Voorhees or his father. There's just like weird things like we don't get answers to in this film. So like that's what I would probably say is like terms of negatives. There's nothing really deep about this film where they try to build the lore too much. And it is kind of a copycat version of the previous film. It's still a very badass camp film with a lot of great killings. The killings are badass. The cast is on point. And like I said, Jenny and the tussle with Jason Voorhees in that last third act is pretty much one of the best. And a lot of people herald Jenny as their top final girl when it comes to the Friday the 13th franchise. She just is really iconic in that way. Plus, she's like great at giving interviews, the actress, and she loves talking about the film. She's really into that stuff. I believe she's a psychiatrist now in real life, so I think that's kind of cool. And this film, like I said, has a badass bunch of special features on it and all that kind of stuff. But in my book, Friday the 13th Part 2 is going to get an 8 out of 10 in my book. It's just, right there, slightly lower than that first film, but an 8 out of 10 is still an amazing ranking. That's still like, bomb. Like this is a highly recommend film for sure. Even if like this is one of those franchises, like if you don't see the first Friday the 13th, it's okay. You can watch this second one first. It gives you that little tidbit of the end of the first film and then carries you on into this film. It's kind of like a tease. It's like, oh, well, if you like this one, maybe you'll like that first film. You saw the last 6-7 minutes. Go back and watch that film, you know what I mean? So I think once they started this Friday the 13th franchise, these first 4 to first 5 to 6, they're just going all out, pumping them out, cranking them out throughout the 80s. And, Jason was badass, killed a lot of people, and was my favorite slasher, or is my favorite slasher, still to date. Friday the 13th Part 2. Thanks for sticking around with me all for this retrospective review of Friday the 13th Part 2. Let me know in the comments section what you think of this film. Is this one of your favorite Friday films? What are your earliest memories of this film and all that kind of stuff? I would love to hear from all of you. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stick to the channel and make sure to stay tuned because we're going to be going through all the Friday the 13th films. And I'm also going to be having some reviews for some Arrow videos I picked up. I know it's a little late. And I have already seen these films, but I've seen the special features now and the transfers, and I must say, I'm very impressed. Have a safe and happy day, everyone. Peace out.